In this video, we're going to talk about another phylum in the superphylum Lophotrochozoa. So we're going to talk about the ribbon worms, which remember they are classified in the superphylum of Lophotrochozoa. They are protostomes, so the blastula makes the mouth. They are bilateria, so they have bilateral symmetry. They are eumetazoa, so they have those specialized tissues. And then, of course, they are animals. And the name of this phylum is Nemertea. Nemertea are also more commonly referred to as ribbon worms or proboscis worms. They are mostly marine, meaning that they are found in saltwater, so things like oceans. They can be small, so 1 centimeter, or they can be several meters long. Their body is a soft, unsegmented, flattened tube, and you can kind of see them in this picture here. There are these kind of tube worms sticking up here. And their body has some contractile properties, so they can actually change their shape a little bit. So they can kind of become shorter and fatter or longer and skinnier. I mentioned that these worms can be called proboscis worms, and that's because they have something called a proboscis. And a proboscis is a tentacle that can catch food. So on this picture here, it's showing it kind of internally, but what can happen is that it can actually turn inside out and basically be shot out of the mouth region. And so it can essentially kind of shoot out, grab prey, and then kind of like suck the prey back in. And it's enclosed in its own cavity known as a rhinocele. And rhino, you can think of something like a nose. And it's not part of the rest of the body cavity. So it's not actually part of the coelom. It's a different cavity that is produced in these organisms. The Nemertea have a well-developed digestive system. So they have a mouth that takes in food. That food then goes through a stomach and then through the intestines and then out the anus. And the intestines have these pouches called diverticuli. If you've ever heard of the kind of condition that can affect humans, diverticulitis, it just means that there are these pouches in the intestines. And in humans, those pouches are not supposed to be there. In Nemertea, it is actually a feature of their intestines. They have a somewhat developed nervous system. They have 4 ganglia that make up a kind of a basic brain, and you can see those here. Remember, the ganglia is just those collections of nerve cell bodies, and so it's where nerves communicate with each other. Or communication between neurons. It's located anteriorly, so this is that cephalization that we've talked about before. They also have these longitudinal nerve cords that extend along the length of the body. You can see that in this kind of bluish green structure here. And they have eye spots, which are known as ocelli. And so these eye spots can detect light. The species in this phylum are able to regenerate missing or damaged body parts. They can also reproduce asexually through fragmentation, meaning that part of their body can break off and then develop into its own independent organism. They can also reproduce sexually. They are dioecious, which means that there are separate male and female individuals. And external fertilization occurs. So the eggs and sperm, remember these are the gametes, also known as the sex cells, are released into the water where they then fuse during fertilization.